Hey, welcome to another great show, Three Conservative Gimps. We've got an action-packed show tonight. We have a special guest coming up shortly, former congressman and former presidential candidate, Thaddeus McCotter, all the way from Michigan, who served in CD-11, I believe. So let's get this show on the road. Let's welcome my co host, all the way from Muskogee, Oklahoma. It is Lloyd Mendenhall. Welcome, welcome, Lloyd.
Howdy, everyone. How you doing, Art?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Did a little bit of
Oh,
fishing today.
yeah. I haven't done anything. I've dreamt about having charcoal hamburgers, but I haven't bothered to get out and actually go make them. So maybe tomorrow my oldest son will make me some, and I won't have to worry about it. I have been dreaming about good old-fashioned hamburgers now for 3 days. Go
All
figure. I
right,
don't
let's
know.
welcome our next co host, all the way from the good state of New York. He's always in charge. It's Charles in charge.
Hey,
Welcome,
folks.
welcome, Charles.
Hey, Art. Hey, Lloyd.
Hey, Charles. How you doing, Charles?
Doing good. How's about you?
Can't complain.
Good.
I could, but nobody listens.
How are things
Oh,
in New York? And is the weather good up there?
Oh, the weather's spectacular.
Good.
It's in the low 80s. There's a nice breeze. Mom and I had plans today that sort of fell apart, so we did the same thing we did yesterday, which was to go up and get ice cream and
Ah, there you go.
go
Ice
around.
cream
And
is always good.
there's farms where there's horses and pigs, so we drive by and we wave hello to the pigs and stuff. And
Ah, okay.
that sounds good.
Well, we call them cops around here, but that's all right. Hey, things have changed. He was going to be later, and he's going to be on time tonight. So let's welcome all the way from the great state of Michigan, former center for Catholic Central High School football team. Let's welcome Thaddeus McCotter.
Hello, Art. Hello, Lloyd. Hello, Charles. I was
Thaddeus.
a lineman, not a
Oh,
center. Though.
okay.
I was a tackle, defensive, offensive tackle.
Ooh.
Yes, I don't want the center, Matt Radel, to be upset. I'm not stealing his limelight. He was actually Matt Radel. Actually, he was a state champion wrestler, so I certainly don't want to be on his bad side.
Yeah.
Catholic Central had a lot of good teams. Way
Yeah,
back in the 70s when I was.
Well, they had some really good ones too under Mitch Hancock. My middle son Timothy, actually played on for 3 of the 4 years. They were state champs, and then 1 year they were runner-up. So they've had a good run lately too.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
So did you guys go up against Brother Rice?
Rice isn't they're not the same division anymore. They were down a division, but they also were not like a wrestling powerhouse. You had like Temperance, Bedford, and those types of places, Rockford. So, wrestling's a very interesting sport. Catholic Central just happened to be lucky in the sense that we're very good in a lot of sports. We were lucky in the fact that we attract such good kids.
Well, I went
After
to
my
Royal
class
Oak
got
Kimball
done,
High
they
School.
clearly went uphill. Yeah.
I went to Royal Oak Kimball High School, so we had some good teams there as well.
I remember
Baseball,
them.
basketball, football, track.
Kimball was very. I remember them. They were very good.
Mm-hmm. Now it's Royal Oak High School. They merged the two high schools, and John Darrow is now the junior high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yep. That's a shame.
Yep, they tore down a whole bunch of junior high schools.
Yeah, they're doing that in Livonia. They're doing that all over Michigan. We were the 4th fastest state for population loss.
Wow.
Yep, 400,000, I think, left the state.
Wow.
We've always had a problem with our young people leaving, but now everybody seems to be leaving. I think COVID was a large part of that, as it probably was for Charles can tell us about New York. A lot of people were leaving the state for places like they were less restrictive, such as Florida, Alabama, some Sunbelt states. But we were number 4, which was very surprising to a lot of people. not necessarily to me, because as someone who opposed Governor Whitmer's lockdowns and abjectly absurd restrictions, it did make a lot of sense why people would leave. You can't treat people like that and expect them to stay, not in a free country. You can vote with your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
We were fortunate in
one of your
Oklahoma.
former colleagues, Thaddeus, is now governor here in Colorado, Jared Polis.
Yeah, we overlapped a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jared was, as I recall, he was pretty rich.
Oh yeah, yeah. When he left, while he was in the state house here in Colorado, he was state representative, and he basically bought every seat that he ran for. So he inherited an internet company, an e-greeting cards company, and just before the .com bubble burst, he sold it. Had $30 million, and after he left Congress, he left with over $300 million.
Wow.
Yep. And
Wow.
what did he invest in? Insurance companies. Those companies that they were trying to get Obamacare going, and so he made millions off of his
I've never understood that. When I was in Congress, I was always one of the bottom 2 or 3 members in terms of personal wealth.
Yeah.
And that never changed.
Sounded like you had integrity.
Well, all I know, I had penury. I know that. But so I just think that the stock trading is just insane that they can even, it should all be in a blind trust. I mean,
yes,
it's just so.
Either that or just divest everything and just have cash.
Well, but it's such an obvious way that they diminish public trust in the institution. Look,
Yep.
I mean, you know what they do? What they do is they generally hire their relatives and have their relatives do things, and they vote for those interests. Oh, so and so all of a sudden is magically popped up over here as a lobbyist for some organization or for some funding entity, or is working for the government now. Oh, what a surprise! Or else what they'll do is, or else they'll wait until they leave and then go do that. I always told people I'd never be a lobbyist. 1, I wouldn't be very good at, and 2, I also believe in hell.
Or their son gets
I don't want to go
a
there
big
either.
job in an oil company in Ukraine.
Oh yeah, a lot of when you're senatorial level and high, or a lot of the executive branch type people, they wind up making their money overseas and hiding it, burying it, or they set up some other organization. You know, all it does is it continues to diminish the public's trust in the institution and in the individuals who house it, and it leads to much of some of the problems that we're seeing today, where it's even across the board, whether you're a Bernie Sanders supporter or a Trump supporter, neither one of you has a whole lot of faith in the Congress or in representative institutions or in corporate America.
Right. And what are your thoughts about the NAACP having a travel ban to Florida?
It's
or travel
unfortunate.
advisory.
It's unfortunate that another institution with a long history of trying to fight for social change has turned into just another partisan instrument that has been weaponized for the Democrats and the left. That was a bipartisan organization not that long ago for people who believed in equality and wanted to fight for it. And now it's just another Democratic organization that's echoing the talking points. And I think it's just a terrible shame. But again, if you look at it, a lot of the African-American community, we saw it in Trump's numbers back in 2020, and you saw it to a certain extent with Hispanics, especially in 2020 and 2022. They're starting to look at Republicans, or at least they're starting to consider themselves more independent as opposed to lockstep Democrats, especially the youth, the African-American youth. So people like the NAACP, what they're really doing is a lot of what happens to these institutions. We saw this with the media, number one, is the fact that they destroy their own credibility. And eventually, like we saw the media, look, Republicans and Democrats don't trust the media. The Democrats have a larger share, but overall, they still have a negative view of the media. The vast majority of independents and Republicans have no trust in the media, the regime media at this point. And when you see places like the NAACP or other institutions that become political and basically subvert their own reason for existing, which is for a bipartisan fight for social change, they're just going to diminish their own credibility as well. And it's very unfortunate. And again, it's going to continue to make it harder to bridge some of the divisions that we see in the country already.
Yeah, it's
Anything, Lloyd?
getting to it's just gotten to the point where, of course, I've said this before, and part of the problem is the Republicans have allowed themselves to be manipulated, and that's not what I want to say. They're not playing the game. In other words, and I heard this today. When it comes to these things, they're going to have to get out and vote. They're going to have to, get out and vote early, do ballot harvesting, all that stuff, to start getting people in place that can start putting some controls back on. Because, the press shouldn't be bipartisan. We shouldn't, should be bipartisan, shouldn't be partisan is what I meant to say. And yet we allow them, but as I've said in the past, that's the way these leftist governments have always defeated their country, is by coming in and taking out the press, the radio, whatever it is, and they control everything. And then they start going into different organizations that did good, but now they can use those organizations they infiltrate them and use them to push their own agenda, and it usually is, the conservatives and the right don't really have a lot of organizations that we can infiltrate, because, and that's really not the way to do it. It needs to be above board, but unfortunately the Democrats don't like, or I should say the leftists don't like to play the game above board. They like playing behind the scenes, which is what's happened with the NAACP, what's happened with our press, and we need to, as Americans, wake up, because that's what this weekend's about. Memorial Day, all the people who sacrificed with their lives so we could have a free country. And it seems like it really has turned into just another paid day off. It's not, people are forgetting, I say people, they're here in Oklahoma, we're lucky. We have a more conservative base. Even the Democrats are conservatives. So
right.
they vote, we got what they call the blue dog Democrats, and they're very strong here in Oklahoma. And that's why we've got so many Republicans that run for office, and we have a Republican governor who, okay, he's a little bit like Donald Trump. He does things and says things that ticks people off. And so, he has his own enemies, but yeah, I just hate to see what this country has turned into. And I wonder, do you see any possibility of it in the next presidential cycle and the one after that in 28? Do you see any hope for turning it all around, or is it just going to be divided the way it has been since 2000?
Oh, I think that the independents are still wondering which party they want to support for any given period of time. They keep going back and forth, which is why we continue to see majority changes in the House or the Senate or even the presidency. So I think that there's hope, but one party has to deliver. Obviously, Biden is clearly not delivering. His numbers are in the tank, so the public doesn't like what he's doing. To a certain extent, as an American, I'm disappointed that the president's failing. Of course, I don't agree with his policies. I wish he'd do better things. But I do take some solace in the fact that the public clearly does not think this is working, because it's not. So the public, we remain a very practical people by nature and an optimistic people by heart. And so I'm optimistic about the future, because as Americans continue to see what doesn't work, they'll continue to try to find what will work. But when you talk about it, Lloyd, I was talking to somebody else about this. There's so much talk about the 2020 election. I want to know what you're doing in 2024 to make sure it doesn't happen again. That the Democrats can't maximize their partisan advantage through extra legal means to try to tilt the playing field in favor of their candidate. Instead, everybody keeps looking back. I think that if Republicans are putting forward an aspirational vision that unites enough of the country and starts moving forward, the rest of the country will see that it works, start to come along and start voting Republican again, start voting conservatism. As you know, conservatism is not an act of negation, it's an act of creation. We preserve the permanent things of life, faith, family, community, country, and then we try to, by using those as bases, we try to change the things that we can and to make life better where we can. That's what basically Americans are looking for, but they're not finding it with a left-wing Democratic Party that is completely out of touch. But they're also not finding it with people like Donald Trump, because basically, unfortunately, his personality gets in the way of the policies. And so the public's just kind of sitting there trying to figure out, okay, which one of you is actually going to scratch my itch and do the right thing and show me what can work.
Yeah. I remember one of the last times you were on before the 2020 election and then the 22. I said both times, if it can be lost, it will be done by the Republicans because they're good at losing their own. They're good at losing their own elections, and unfortunately, it proved to be true. They didn't, and like you said, too many people are focused on 2020. That's gone. It's we need. I'm not even looking at 24 right now. I'm really looking at 2028 because the way I see it, let's say it is Biden and Trump, for example. If Biden gets reelected, he's a lame duck president. Same goes for Trump. He's also lame duck. And lame duck presidents tend to muddy things up but don't really accomplish a lot. We need somebody who's going to be younger and be able to stay, we need a good, because this is what happened under George W. We got Dick Cheney, great guy, but unfortunately, he wasn't the guy who could carry the mantle for the conservative and the Republican Party in the next election after Bush.
That's a great point, Lloyd, because if you remember, I was there when George Bush was reelected, and I remember them coming in and saying, okay, we're in the middle of Iraq and Afghanistan. And I kept saying that what we're doing isn't working. The reconstruction isn't working. We need to get to the grassroots. It was a long story, but I remember they looked at us and they said, oh, no, we're going to fix Social Security now. I said, well, you might want to take care of Iraq and Afghanistan first. Oh, no, they decided they were going to try to do Social Security. Well, we know what happened in 2006. We lost the majority and everything else. And then he winds up not focusing on the banks, which he should have been looking at. We wound up having the banking meltdown. And that's how you got Obama. We screwed up war and peace because the lame duck president was looking at building his legacy rather than making sure that what you started, you finished it, and you finished it properly. So when you look at what Trump's doing or what Biden's doing, if you think Biden is governing from the left now, imagine if he's a lame duck and he's reelected. You're only just going to get more of this. You're going to get more of what you didn't want in the first place. But I don't think Biden's running. I've never believed that he's anything more than a one-term president that they put in. And I think that you're going to see that as time goes on, that Joe Biden will not be the Democratic nominee for president. And what you're seeing is Newsom and whoever the Obama team wants, they're engaging in a shadow primary for the moment that Biden isn't there. And that I think that announcement will come later because right now what you're watching is the Republicans just destroying themselves, already just attacking each other across the board. And so for the Democrats, Biden can just sit there for a while, take whatever flack is coming, and leave their candidates free and easy and free and clear right now in the eyes of the electorate. So unfortunately, it's working.
Yeah, we always seem to give them the ammunition for their commercials.
It's Ronald Reagan, the 11th commandment.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, he didn't follow that when he ran against Gerald Ford in '76, but hey.
But, it was, we just seem to keep repeating the same mistakes. And I know that there's some highly intelligent people in the party and in the conservative movement, not just, both conservative independents and conservative registered Republicans. And, but they just don't seem to want to coalesce. It's always got to be, let's destroy the other person so we get the nomination. Then when they get it, they've already been given enough ammunition against them that they just end up self-imploding. And that's been my argument. I think, as somebody who is a senior, I think it's time to let these younger candidates start taking over. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing against old fat white guys like me, but hey, we're all getting tired of them because they're the ones that keep screwing up. So let's get some younger blood, some you know, Latino. I don't care. They don't have to check any boxes. Let's just get somebody with some flipping common sense that has two brain cells that they can rub together to make some, to
Well,
bring back some.
what you need are practical politicians that
Yes,
are actually going door to door rather than sitting at rallies.
exactly.
You know, the left will knock your door 5 times, while most conservatives don't even get out of bed. They'll be watching Fox News, but they won't be going door to door. The left has their young people actively engaging in campaigns, and conservatives generally don't. If we are seeing it, it's starting, as you said, Lloyd, in places like the Latino community and some of those border places in Texas and others, where they're starting from the grassroots, they're building up, and they're dealing with school boards. We've for so long, it's for a party that believes that the sovereign citizen is the ultimate power in the country, which, as we know, is accurate. We continue to focus on the presidency. We continue to focus on Washington. Why aren't conservatives running for school board? Why aren't conservatives running for city council? That's where your farm team comes from. That's where most change happens. That's where you build a reputation. That's where you build the brand of the Republican Party. The left is doing this all over America. And instead, we're sitting here talking about looking at the presidency going, well, that's going to save us. Well, that's not how the system was designed. Because right then we're buying into the left's myth that somehow if you control Washington, you control the country and you can dictate from the top down. We're a bottom-up party. We're a grassroots party, not a Washington-based party. Am I wrong?
And that's what we need is because I mean, just look at the school boards, the some of these decisions that they've made on behalf of parents. Saying that parents don't need to be involved. We've got it covered.
Yep.
When I went to school, we had rules and regulations. I was a mischievous young man, and my seat of education met the board of education. A seat of knowledge met the board of education many times, and they called my parents to let me know that I'd screwed up. And then I got it when I got home. And it didn't hurt me. It didn't scar me. It didn't ruin me. If anything, I was probably harder on my kids than my parents were on me because I didn't want them to be like me. So.
See, but you remember what the left did, because they're such duplicitous, mendacious individuals. Do you remember when they colluded with the Loudoun County School Board, some of those people, the Department of Justice, to send a letter to themselves so that they could start investigating parents at school boards who were exercising their constitutional right to petition government for the redress of grievances? Now, a lot of Republicans thought, oh, this is all about the transgender and everything else, and they just don't want these parents talking about it. No, the real effect was they don't want parents running for school board and laying out the reasons why they're running for school board and expressing them publicly, because they were protecting the people that they had there on these school boards throughout the country. They don't want us running for school boards. I started as a community college trustee myself, and then a county commissioner. And so I understand it. It's also great training for if you're lucky enough to be elected to other positions. But that was everybody on our side, well, they just don't want them talking about. No, they don't want them running for it or building a platform to take those seats and implement positive change.
Right.
But our people are so focused on the presidency, so focused on Washington. We're a Washington-centric based party, which is absolutely antithetical to what we're supposed to be. Ronald Reagan didn't say, trust me. Ronald Reagan said, trust the American people.
Yeah.
The devolution of power from Washington back to the sovereign citizen is what we're supposed to be about. Because there's nothing is a greater protection of you than limiting the power of the government, as the founders understood.
Yeah. Because one of the things that they've been so that by getting these people on the school boards, and they've been doing it for long before the transgender and all of this stuff came about. They've been doing it for generations, and they're teaching. And now we got young people that are following the 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 malarkey that comes out of these school boards, and I, because I've got grandkids that, I got grandkids and great grandkids that are in that era that, they're listening, to this stuff, and they wonder why, their mom and dads and their grandma and grandpas are conservative, because their opinion from what they've been taught in school, because they haven't learned history the right way. My grandson comes over and we talk for hours about American history, and he said, I didn't learn that in school. So I look it up and say, well, here it is,
Well,
and it's
Lloyd,
made him think.
sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, Lloyd, you're absolutely right, and the numbers bear it out. There was a study that came out from an educational group. It was a mainstream one. It was not a conservative group, and it said that history and civics, the levels of history and civics retention are dropping through the floor. They also go with reading comprehension. If you wanted to start as a leftist or a communist and you wanted to start the population to believe there was year zero, you'd make them as ignorant as possible. You wouldn't tell them how to defend their rights and privileges as an American citizen through constitutional mechanisms, and you'd leave them unilaterally disarmed in the face of an omnipotent Leviathan. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if you don't know if you don't understand, if you don't learn the lessons, if you don't learn the lessons of the past, you're just going to repeat them, So they're more than happy to raise a generation of ignorant individuals that are perfect little serfs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take that in with the account, as we all understand, look, when you're younger, you generally tend to be more liberal, because you just haven't seen how the world works. You haven't seen or the limits of anything. The sky's the limit when you're a kid, generally. So we've always had that issue, but what now you're seeing is that instead of taking young people and with the work of the parents and with the educational system to learn them how to critically think and to become independent thinkers and independent individuals, what you see is the system, especially the school systems, turning them into basically paranoid and dependent individuals who are perfectly willing to be obedient to the state. They don't even know how to rebel anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I read a book here just the other day, and it talks about the Vietnam War, and I listened to some of the stuff that he said back then, that this writer, and I think it's called Out of the Shadows, and he was talking, and was talking about the rebellion that went on during the 60s and 70s, the flower power, and that was something we had back then. We had, in the 70s and 60s, we had Jesus freaks, Now you can't even say that name, And these were the ones that they learned this in college, That's where it started, in college. These Hyton and Asbury there in California, and it moved across the country. But they knew how to protest. They understood, and the college professors who were leftist even then and so they created that generation of leftists who raised their kids to be free thinkers and open thinkers, but then or they became teachers themselves eventually. They retired from their communes and their hippie attitudes and grew up to become teachers. And then they started teaching the same, and it's just gotten, worse and worse. And it goes back to our education. It goes back to, this, really in the 60s. And unfortunately, that's my generation.
So the left is running around talking about white supremacists, domestic terrorists, and everything else. But we actually had a domestic terrorist, Bill Ayers and the Weathermen, and they became tenured college professors, and they hung out with Barack Obama.
Exactly. Exactly.
So what's wrong with this picture? If you're a domestic terrorist, I don't care what you support, you need to be in jail. There's no good cause for a domestic terrorist. There is no appeal from the ballot to the bullet, as Lincoln told us. So why is Bill Ayers walking around free?
And
why is Bernardine Dohrn walking around free and tenured and living off the taxpayer dime?
Yeah, it's
Whoops.
Yeah, it's I look at it. I actually think a lot of the of course, it comes out of the unions. A lot of it does. The teachers' unions, the other unions that have always been somewhat socialist or somewhat to the left. And then you get I think a lot of this, I've said all along, this is payback for the McCarthy era. You know, the big red scare from the 50s. I think all those people that were blacklisted went on to become eventually teachers and they became party leaders in a leftist group, even though they, no, we weren't communists, but yet they were. I think, and because in the 20s, communism really started taking off all around the world. Of course, that's Bolshevik Revolution happened during World War One, but there was movement across the United Kingdom, across all of Europe, and the socialism just kept slowly slipping in there. And I think when we had the big red scare under the McCarthy era, I think they slipped back into the woodwork, but they kept doing what they were doing.
Well, the big red scare didn't uncover the Cambridge Five either. It wasn't a very good scare, was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Not a very good scare because they didn't unearth the actual communists that were rife within the government, like Alger Hiss. At least Nixon found him. Mm-hmm. So for them to sit there and say that somehow this is a payback for McCarthy when they're doing the very same type of McCarthyite tactics, there is no payback because none of us were alive to do any of this. And I would argue that it was wrong at the point in time and it's wrong now, no matter who does it or for what reason. The left believes they can justify anything they want to do, and they've done it. And they do it with accountability journalism. They do it with Marcoux, with repressive tolerance and everything else. They think they're justified to do whatever they want, regardless of the Constitution, the laws of the land. And we see that across the board. That's why Bill Ayers, again, is a tenured professor. Good luck. Explain that to me. And he's living off taxpayer money.
Yeah.
He's just laughing all the way to the bank, and he's hanging out with Barack Obama. I have a very simple bet for my leftist friends. Look, I hate Nazis and communists. Why can't you hate both too? They are both a direct enemy of the United States Constitutional Republic.
Yep.
And the communists killed more people.
Yeah, they did.
So unless you're rejecting both, you got a problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But of course, if they don't teach history and civics, Lloyd, then no one will know what they did.
Exactly. How would they know it? Yeah.
Not only will they not know who the Bolsheviks were, they certainly won't know who the Khmer Rouge was.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And communist China, why? They're our friends, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Yeah, they make our phones. Yeah. They make our computers. They make, just about everything we own comes from China. Look, about the drones. I have a drone channel that Lloyd watches, and Charles is on the panel. And DJI, they're out of China. Autel is out of China. Even some of the smaller drone companies out of China. The only one that's not is Skydio. But their headquarters is in the U.S., but their manufacturing is around the world. And now Florida wants to ban the use of DJI drones so that the police department and paramedics or fire department can't use the drones that could be saving lives to help us out. So,
Well, you got to look at it as a two-edged sword, though, in the fact that if we're buying stuff from China or buying stuff that parts are made in China, we are actually supporting the Chinese Communist Party. And it's just that simple. There's only one way to look at it. If you're buying, and unfortunately, I heard today they're talking about, because the Chinese Navy has been patrolling, been doing some things the last few days. They're talking about Taiwan and the chip shortage that we're going to have if they take on Taiwan. All they have to do is lob a bomb over there at one of their big manufacturers, and we're going to be short of stuff right there on the spot, because Taiwan is one of the, and you've got African nations and other European nations, including, they actually are pushing the Russians around now, because Russia needs China to help promote their war in the Ukraine. So I think, and I can't say that I don't, because I'm sitting here with an Apple phone. I've got 3 DJI drones over here. I've got all sorts of electronic
Yeah.
equipment. I'll bet everything here has a Chinese chip in it somewhere. You know, the problem is we got to start making it here in the United States. Unfortunately, we can't compete financially because everybody who puts something together in the United States feels that they deserve a minimum of $20 an hour, where they have prisoners that they can, you know, why don't we make our prisons start doing some work, you know, instead
Well,
of
technically, you have prison industries in some places, and a lot of them were actually shut down because businesses, whether unionized or not, did not like the unfair competition from the federal government or from the states that were operating those prisons.
Yeah.
So, but in the final analysis, look, I'm more than happy to have a free market. I'm more than happy to have a capitalist system, especially a free market. Again, I put the emphasis there as opposed to the former, as to the other. But in the final analysis, communist China is a communist country, and everything belongs to the party. Our people don't understand communist theory. They do not understand that the Chinese are allowed to do whatever the state lets them do. But in the end, it's all communal property and it's owned by the party. And we've never understood that. One of the things that I find fascinating is when people say, "Oh, the Chinese Communist Party helped to raise the Chinese people million people out, tens of millions out of poverty." No, foreign investment did that. Okay,
yes,
Mao had a famine that killed millions of people, and then they butchered people in their prisons. So no, don't tell me about what the Chinese Communist Party did for people. Why don't you ask the people of Hong Kong how it's going for them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no, it was foreign investment. It was them copying us. It was basically them trying to do everything. Stalin tried the same thing for a while. They want to match the West, and they took us on through the financial system and through the base, smaller manufacturing elements that they could with their cheap and slave labor. And now it's got us right where they want us, with our supply chains being dependent upon them, which means they can shut them down anytime they want.
Yep.
And our corporations don't give a rat's ass about anything except making money. And it's just like some of the companies we saw in the United States back in the 30s, as you know, Lloyd, they wound up putting plants in Nazi Germany. We had to bomb them on our way to Berlin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're doing the same. Our companies are doing the same thing. You know, like you said, they did in the 30s with Nazi Germany. I mean, it's just, and that's the problem. That's why it's so important that we have to teach history, and like you said, it starts at the school board, and that's where we need to be pushing, like you said, because we need to re-educate another generation, because we got a new generation coming up, and you know, us old farts aren't going to be around all the time to be able to tell. You know, I'm fortunate in I grew up with parents and grandparents from the, you know, my dad fought in World War II, my grandfather fought in World War I. I had uncles that were there. I had an uncle at Bataan and was a POW for 5 years, and or 4 years, I think it was. He was in for a total of 5, but he was POW for 4 of that. And it was like, I heard all this stuff, and I've been able to tell these stories to my kids, but now my kids, their focus is on something new and different, and so sometimes my grandkids will come to me and I get to tell them these things, but they don't hear it in school. They don't hear this at school. They hear it, and I'm not always going to be around to teach it, and that's why it's important. Like you said, we've got to start getting some young people involved as conservatives, or, you know, conservative thinking, to join these school boards, and, you know, because you know, otherwise we're going to be speaking Chinese in another 10 years if things don't change.
Well, I saw the little thing on the screen from one of the viewers that we're their best customer, but that's not how they view this. They view this as an existential battle against us. They view that we are the hegemon. They are engaged in unrestricted warfare against us at the present time, asymmetrical largely. They use every means at their disposal, large laws that they pass, such as any foreign company doing business with the United States. They have to report back everything they learn to the government. They are agents of the government by Chinese law. If you look at the way that their military's talked about, they expect war with us at any point in time in the future. They are preparing for taking over Taiwan with us as the main enemy. Look at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization with Russia, Iran, and others. They're running rampant throughout Latin America. They are running rampant all over the Middle East right now. So when you look at it, they don't view us as a customer. They view us as the enemy. And everything that they say indicates that is exact. I take them at their word. I remember an argument I had with a Republican member of the House leadership. He's no longer there. And I called them Communist China. And he said, there's no need to be provocative. And I said, that's what they call themselves, you idiot.
Yeah.
Because they could not understand that there are such things as they're not really communists. It's like, excuse me, they think they are. Okay. Because I remember people would read Mein Kampf in the 30s and go, oh, he's just putting that out for domestic consumption in Germany. It's like, if you had a brain in your head, sometimes lunatics are lunatics. And that doesn't mean that they're illiterate. They could be a literate lunatic. But you better take them at their word. Because even if he didn't believe it and he told the German people that he did, he'd make sure that it had to happen so they wouldn't turn on him. And so if the Chinese leaders are talking about taking out the United States, becoming the number one leader, the Middle Kingdom again, they're putting that out there. They may not believe it. Well, they're going to have to believe it or the population will turn on them. It's the same thing. But again, I made the mistake, Lloyd. I took history and civics to heart when I learned them in school.
Yeah, I did too. It was one of my favorites.
Yep.
I was fortunate. I had a sister-in-law who's half Chinese. Her father had came here he must have came here in the 20s or 30s. He came here it had been later than that, but he left China and he left his family and his brother behind because of the communist. He was a white. He was part of the White Party rather than the Reds, and he fled there. But unfortunately, he was able to become one of Denver's premier Chinese cooks or chefs, and but his brother finally made it out, and they were both in their 90s, and the first time they'd seen each other for all those years. And he came over when he was in his 20s, but he always talked about how bad it was when the communists started taking over China. And he was. I've been blessed to be able to get history from some of the people who were there. But we don't have anybody, teaching that, and that's like you said, I took civics and history to heart as well, and that's, I guess, where I get some of my attitude.
Well, so William F. Buckley said conservatism isn't really an ideology or a philosophy; it's more of a predisposition. Who might argue with Buckley?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like, what is it your parents tell you? Well, hold on, sit down, think about it for a minute. Hold your horses, think about it.
Yep.
Right? That's conservatism. I may do it, I may not, but I sure as hell going to think about it first, instead of acting rashly and getting myself into bigger trouble than I thought. It's just very commonsensical way to approach.
I wished I'd had more common sense in my 20s than I do now in my later years in life.
I think we all do.
Yeah.
That's not how it works, Lloyd. That's just not
Unfortunately, now that I've got enough smarts to know better, I'm too old to do it anyway, so what difference does it make? But, it's just, I shake my head every day. I read something or hear something on the news, and I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. Really? This is what people think? And unfortunately, it's not what everybody thinks, because my state is one of those that's proved them wrong. Florida, I think, is another one. But it's the squeaky wheel that gets oiled first. And that's why we got the 1% groups that are forcing or guiding are using their agendas to guide our country. And unfortunately, it's just a small group, but they make the loudest noise.
Well, I don't think it should surprise conservatives, because even before the advent of the internet and social media, we were always the party that was business oriented, numbers oriented, where the left were the wordsmiths, the ones who were in the entertainment, the academia, the media. They were the wordsmiths. We were the arithmetic, the mathematicians. And that was a generality, obviously, but that was kind of how things kind of played out. That's why Reagan was such a danger to the left, because he actually could communicate. He came out of entertainment. He came out of what was considered one of their bastions, as opposed to like big business.
Right.
So for us, though, the internet, the rise, the social communications revolution in which we're living, the left was more able to adapt to it and implement it for their political purposes than we ever were going to be. But now, was as usual, like with so much of what we saw back in the 70s, 60s, 80s, they get a head start, we catch up, surpass them, and they change the rules. So we're in the catch-up phase. Eventually, we'll catch them and pass them, and then we'll be back. The cycle of life will continue.
Mm-hmm. Now, I wanted to touch on, you know who Bryan Cranston is?
Yeah, Malcolm in the
Yeah,
Middle
he's the
and
actor
Breaking
from
Bad.
Breaking Bad. He was giving an interview, and he was talking about MAGA, Make America Great. And he was talking about how how they view MAGA. Well, America was never great. Has it been great for them? And I'm like going, well, you know, he may have a point, because where do a lot of those people live? Democrat controlled city, where their opportunities and economic status is terrible, you know? And
No, Art, don't buy it for a minute. First of all, if you apply his
well,
his
I don't
leftist,
buy it.
if you
But
apply his leftist ideology to this, he has no right to speak for black people at all. Isn't that what someone who was woke would tell you? Who are
Yeah.
you, white male, cisgendered male, to talk about what black people's experience are? You don't speak about my truth. So right there, he's a hypocrite right off the bat. Number two, Tim Scott would tell him he's wrong, as he did in his campaign announcement right off the bat. Thomas Sowell will tell you the same thing. It's racist to think that every black person thinks the same way about anything. So right there, he's not only a hypocrite, he's a racist. He's certainly biased in terms of color biased. I think he needs to go get re-educated at the DEI fair. He needs to go back to the seminar and take that test again, because he clearly doesn't know what he's talking about any more than Joy Behar saying that Tim Scott and other African Americans, they don't know what it means to be black in America, which I find fascinating, because last I looked, Tim Scott was black and in America. And in fact, is a U.S. Senator of the United States of America. So who is she to talk for him? And who is she? Basically, she's calling him an Uncle Tom, isn't she?
Yeah.
So who the hell is she to do that to anybody? All right. Has she been canceled yet by the left? The people who bring you cancel culture to enforce the cultural norms to make us all? Oh, no. Because they're the people who make America miserable again. All right. I want nothing to do with them. And I think the vast majority of Americans are tired of these people with their own stupid rules. Who the hell ever voted for any of this crap? Anybody? Nope. Okay, we're done now. I don't believe in that crap. Go away now. Go do Malcolm in the Middle reunion for all I care.
Yeah.
Okay, Joy Behar, I will defend you. I will defend to the death your right to be an idiot and have a right to free speech. That's my job. And I got to leave you, but I'll leave you with this. That's what tomorrow's all about. Tomorrow will be Memorial Day. They died for the rights of every single one of us, the liberty of every single one of us, for the equality of every single one of us. And as long as the cancel culture exists, that to me is not honoring the memory of what these people died for. They died for liberty and equality, and that includes all of our constitutional rights for every single American citizen, those born, those yet to be born, and those who are right now, who are on their way to the process of naturalization to become Americans, to fulfill the promise of this country. And so that's what tomorrow means to me, is to honor and commemorate the people who gave everything they had for us. So I would hope that Mr. Cranston will do the same. And while I disagree with him, again, it's his right, and I will defend to the death his right to say it.
I heard a comment that said, we as Americans have to defend a person's right to speak and say, or to speak and say something that we abhorrently may hate, but as Americans and believers of the Constitution, we have to support not what they say or not what they believe, but their right to say it. You know.
Yeah, my job, if I oppose rioting, my job is not to go riot, to stop it. two wrongs don't make a right, the old common sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's the old Irish blessing. This is for you guys. I don't remember the old Irish blessing was, Lord, if you see my enemies, can you turn their hearts? And if you cannot turn their hearts, Lord, turn their ankles so I can see them when they're coming. and so that's kind of what free speech, isn't it? It's a pressure valve to allow free speech to be out in the public square, and it also allows us to identify the reprobates amongst us who we need to shun and to stay away from.
Yeah.
But we don't get to strip them of their rights either, any more than they get to strip us. Gentlemen,
exactly.
Enjoy tomorrow, enjoy your weekend, and commemorate the fallen. Thanks. I'll see you again. It won't be so long next time.
All
okay.
right.
Charles,
Good seeing you.
Thaddeus.
Good night,
Great
Thaddeus.
to have you.
Night, guys.
Thanks, Thaddeus.
Wow.
Always enlightening when that man is on here.
Yeah.
I always have a good time, and I usually hog the
me
conversation with him, but I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yep. I agree with Charles. You know, we just sit here and listen to you guys, and
let us run our mouth. I know, right? I'm good at that. I admit it. You know, I think that's the reason you had me on here.
Make a good point. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. There were some
I wasn't
very good.
Trying to defend Cranston's. I was trying to, you know, turn it around and make him look like a hypocrite for saying something like that.
Yeah,
you know, and where they live in those communities. You know.
But you know, I living, and as I said, I'm blessed being here in Oklahoma because, you know, we just one of the big things that happened just a year and a half ago or so. I think it's been about a year and a half now. A year and 3 months ago, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of what they're calling the Tulsa Massacre now. It was the Tulsa race riot up until the NAACP outsiders came in. Everybody here in Oklahoma, including the blacks, called it the Tulsa race riot because that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it ended up killing, you know, there were whites that were killed in that, but they don't discuss that because it's all about all the blacks that died there, and it's terrible. I mean, they've been buried in unmarked graves. There's now out trying to find all of these unmarked graves, and they've been pretty successful. They're trying to get DNA matches, you know, to people that died during that. But we learned from that, and we became a more integrated community and society here in Oklahoma.
Right.
You know, and that's so. Yeah, we still see the, you know, we got the thugs, we got the punks, we got, you know, but we have that. I see as many white punks and thugs as I do black or Hispanic or indigenous Americans, Native Americans, Indians, as my family calls them.
But where's the ACLU? They've been pretty quiet. You know, you think they'd be, you know, right in the face of those woke people saying, no, we gotta have, you know, free speech, and we gotta, you know, because didn't they defend the, what was it, the neo-Nazis, the march in Skokie, Illinois?
Exactly. Yeah, they defended them, but, you know, now
they don't want to defend conservatives, you know. And who started that organization? Former communists.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because it was never about free speech, and it was to break down this country from within. That's all it was about. You know?
Yeah, the one thing there's two things I see that's happening. There are a lot of conservatives in Hollywood that are starting to speak up. There's only one real problem about it. Most of them are from the last time they were in a decent movie was probably 40 years ago. I mean, they're a bunch of old farts like us, so nobody listens to them anyways. And this generation, now, who the hell is that? Is that guy that played in that old black and white movie that Grandma and Grandpa watched every so often? You know,
not really. And you got people like Scott Baio and Gina Carano. You know, I mean, he's definitely a young vital for both of them are.
And Kevin Sorbo, from Hercules.
Sorbo, yeah. Hercules.
The problem is they don't get hired after they speak out, or they get fired like Gina Carano.
Yes.
And how about James? Who was the guy that in RoboCop? Was that wasn't James Wood? Was
I want to say Frank.
No, James Wood was in, but James Woods is a conservative as well.
Yeah,
he was in Blue Thunder.
Ah, okay.
James Woods did Blue Thunder, the helicopter thing.
Okay.
So, yeah. And a lot of us, actually, wasn't he in, was James Woods in Jaws?
Peter Weller.
Peter Weller, yeah.
Peter
Weller played
RoboCop.
Yeah.
I always get those two mixed up. I don't know why. They look
I don't know why either, because they don't look anything alike to me.
No?
But I always get you mixed up with, that little guy from Jackass. You look just, y'all look alike to me. And
you know what? I got confused with Matt Roloff from Little People, Big World on TLC.
Yeah. Well, did you see my comment on that when you said that? I said, no. I said, Art, no wonder. I said, y'all look alike. I got off there. I told my wife, I said, boy, I just said something racist to Art. And she said, racist?
Well,
I said, yeah.
They didn't confuse me with Brad Williams. I mean, look at that guy. He's got that big melon on that little stubby body and those little arms, and
yeah. Yeah.
I'm more proportional. I'm just little.
Yeah. You are more proportional. But yeah, Brad Williams. God, feel sorry for his mother giving birth to that head. Oh, he is. He cracks me up.
And you know what? I got to do my last show with him, which was great. That was back in 2009.
Yeah. You ever get a chance to see the one he does with that he did with the ventriloquist I'm always talking about?
Jeff Dunham.
Yeah, you get to hear him tell that story, and actually, I've actually seen. I think I've seen the picture that Jeff Dunham took where he puts Brad Williams up on his puppet stand, and has a picture taken with him. And Jeff Dunham says, "I'm going to hell for this, ain't I?" He says, "Yep."
Well, guys, we've done a little over an hour. I want to thank everybody in the chat for coming. And I hope you enjoyed that show, and hopefully next time it won't be so long. We'll have Thaddeus on. Next week we're going to have Karen Murray on, and she is a NRA gun instructor. And she's also has her own show on KLZ Radio here in Denver. And she is known as Glock Mom on TikTok. So take care, everybody. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Don't forget those who have fallen for our freedom. Take care, everybody.
If somebody has
Bye-bye.
a failed date with her, does that mean they were Glock blocked?
Good night, everybody.
Good night, folks.
Good night.